I'm about to go live here in 1 minute. So that we want to do it this way. So. All right, not sure if I'm live in your end or not. It looks like we've got a countdown here, about 10 seconds, so just bear with me. All right, welcome everyone, and hopefully the technology is working for us tonight. I think that I've got everything all lined up. Having said that, I forgot to hit record here. There we go. All right, so again, I apologize for the technical glitches last week. I'm still getting used to this new program, and I've practiced it a few times this week, so I think I've got everything under control now. And the webinar last week covered the first half, or actually a little bit more than half, of module number 2. There was a lot of content in that module, so I just felt it was best to break it in half for the Q&A portion of the program. So today what we're going to do is I'll very quickly just skim over lessons 1 through 8, and then I will go in, I'll skim over the lessons 9, 10, and 11 as well, and then we'll pretty much just open it up to Q&A. I already have 4 questions that were sent in, which I can deal with over the course of the evening. And I'm just going to open up the Q&A. Just if you can, somebody can just type in a question to make sure that you can hear and see me okay. I'd appreciate that. While I'm waiting for that, I would just like to say thank you very much, Elliot. Just received this in the mail today, so I'm going to hold you to that. And so I'll see if I can do better than a card next year. Well, I guess if you're aiming to be wealthier, I'm going to hold you to that. That's a good challenge. All right, so can you just I can. Everything is good. That's from Brad. Excellent. All right, actually we've got a pretty decent group on here tonight, number-wise. Not quite as big as what we've had in the past, but given that this is part 2, that's understandable. So please feel free to type in any questions as we go along. And I'm just quickly going to skim over what we talked about in the first half of module number 2. And also just a reminder that the questions aren't restricted just to module number 2. For example, I do have a rather lengthy question that's relating to module number 1. So if you have any questions that go back further, that's great. Okay, so lesson number 1, we took a look at the different types of financing that were available to us. We talked about the private versus the vendor take-back, as well as using the insured funds, whether it be the 401ks in the US market or RSPs in Canada. The only thing I want to mention there is that as a Canadian, you cannot use your RSPs to invest in the United States directly, meaning that you can't register a second mortgage or even a first mortgage against a property outside of Canada. What you can do is, if you have equity in a property in Canada, you can register your RSPs or somebody else's RSPs against that property in Canada, take the funds that you receive and invest those funds in the US market. So that's an option that you have. We looked at the different types of mortgages that are out there, banks versus mortgage brokers, and I do lean a little bit towards the mortgage brokers simply because you can build a relationship with a mortgage broker and the likelihood of them staying around long term is much greater than your bank manager. Plus, you have many more options available to you with a mortgage broker than you do with a banker. So the mortgage brokers can do pretty much everything the banker can at the same price or even better terms, and it doesn't cost you any money. So it only makes sense, from my perspective, to use a mortgage broker when you can find a good one. We talked about the importance of credit, understanding what your credit is, how to manage your credit, how to rebuild your credit. That's one of the things that when you are looking for your team members, your mortgage broker in particular, you'll want to talk with a mortgage broker who is interested in you as a person, as an investor. They're wanting to work with you to build your portfolio, not just get you the mortgage for that particular deal. Like real estate agents, mortgage brokers are much the same. It's much easier to work with the individual who just wants to get a single family residential mortgage and do many of those because they're easy. They can just churn them out. When they have to start working with an investor, they spend a lot more time. It's a lot more work on their side. So, you need to be aware of that. Also, they need to be aware of what your goals are, so they make sure they put you into the proper product. Okay. Down payments, how much you need and where they actually come from. Now, the 20% down, that's a guideline or a rule that the big banks use, and that's pretty much across North America. That doesn't mean that if you're using private money, whether it be RSPs or a combination of RSPs, lines of credit and cash, whatever, you can do 100% financing if you have somebody who's willing to do it. But from the big banks and most conventional lenders, they want 20% down. And this money has to be, the rules are only going to become more and more difficult because real estate is one of the easiest venues for criminals to launder their money. So there's a lot of paperwork. They want to see the paper trail, where the money's coming from, how long it's been in your accounts, the sources, etc., and they need proof of that. So just be aware of that. Okay, so then we went on to lesson number 5, was deciding on the different types of investors. I have inclusive or exclusive, silent or active, however you want to term it. The bottom line is you need to be aware of what the needs are from your investor. Some investors like to be very hands-on and they like to be active, involved in the investment transaction themselves, and that may or may not work for you. So myself personally, all of my investors are very hands-off. They hand over the money, and I give them quarterly or semi-annual updates as to what's going on with the property. And any decisions that are being made, I always run it through them as well. So just talked about the different types of investors you want to have. Lesson number 6, we talked about staying out of jail. I put a bit of emphasis on that, and maybe it actually scared a couple people, but I said it for good reason, because it is very serious. You do need to be aware of just how serious it actually is. So you want to make sure you stay within the guidelines of the rules and regulations that are set out by the Securities Commission. They are generally the same across both countries. However, each state and or province has a slightly different spin on it. I know, for example, when I was in Alberta, it was much easier to work with the Securities Commission there than it was in Ontario. However, there's still a lot of things, a lot of rules that you have to be aware of and follow to make sure that you don't get yourself in trouble. And you have to understand and appreciate the Securities Commission, as much of a pain in the butt as it actually is, they're there to help and protect the individual. So the whole concept is that they're there to protect the individual from making an investment into a high-risk investment without being fully aware or educated about the investment. And the idea is that the uneducated investor with very little cash, they can't afford to take that risk. So the Securities Commission makes sure that they restrict it to only those who can afford the risk. That's your accredited investors. So it's sort of challenging because it takes away those good deals for the unaccredited investors, but at the same time, it's also protecting them. So I see both sides of that. Lesson 7, we talked about planning for finding and attracting investors. Again, I know this one is a huge deterrent for a lot of people. It's a very, very scary thought or idea that they're going to have to approach and knock on doors and ask for money. I have never knocked on a door and asked for money. And the way I propose you do it is very different than some people. I'm a very passive individual. I'm not an aggressive individual. So the way I like to attract investors or raise capital is to educate them. And if you get an opportunity to meet me one-on-one and we start talking real estate and especially financial literacy, you'll see how passionate and excited I become. And that's because I see how much more there is to give other people and educate them. And once you learn this information, you should feel compelled to share it with as many people as possible. And just by sharing it with other people is educating other people. And the more people you share it with and educate, the more interest they're going to have in what you're doing. And that's the whole point, is just generate some interest so that they will come to you and ask questions. And as they ask questions, they will then eventually want to do something with you, and you can provide them the opportunity. Once you have people to work with, you need to protect their interests as well as your interests in the real estate transactions, and that's the value of a joint venture agreement, or what we call a co-tenancy agreement. I talk about it being a what-if document, and a what-if document simply means that you are writing down all of the potential issues that could come up. You write down anything and everything you can think of. Your partner or partners in the transaction, they write down all their concerns. Then you sit as a group and you try and resolve all of these issues. You then take these questions and answers, or concerns and answers, and you take that to the lawyer to put it into what I call legalese. They will put it into a legal document to make sure that it reads properly, and that it's, unfortunately, the English language is such a confusing language, and that two people could read the same sentence and take something totally different from it. So that's why the lawyers have to take that document and make sure that it's very clear and concise. And I also included 3 or 4 joint venture agreements, some templates in there, as well as the one agreement that, with the most recent agreement we used for the co-tenancy of our 2 apartment buildings that we bought. Now, I know 2 apartment buildings, you're thinking, well, that's way too big for what we want. It doesn't matter the size of the transaction. It can be a single family house with a joint venture partner. You can take the same document and use it as your model to build your co-tenancy agreement. And if you model that, you'll save yourself thousands and thousands of dollars. And you'll have a really good agreement as well. All right, so that brings us up into what we didn't cover last week. And that's in lesson number 9. We were crunching the numbers using the calculator. And what I've done, for some of you who have gone through some of my other programs, Elliot, for example, you've been using the calculator for quite a while. And what I've done is I've taken this calculator and I've taken out a lot of the elements that are not applicable to it. You don't need to know GRMs, cap rates, etc. when you're dealing with single family homes. So I simplified the calculator to deal with single family homes up to a triplex, fourplex in size. I've also had it updated so that it's nice now. Well, I've got two versions. I've got a Canadian and an American version. So once I do get down into the US market with this program, I will upload the US version as well. And the only real difference between the Canadian and the US version, there's two things. The first is the way the mortgage is actually calculated. In Canada, well, in Canada and the US, they calculate the mortgage interest slightly differently, but the effect, there is a very slight difference in the bottom line. Not enough to worry about. I mean, if you're worrying about pennies on the dollar in a real estate transaction, then you shouldn't be in that real estate transaction to begin with. However, if you're going to do it right. So use the right analyzer, use the right mortgage calculator. The other thing is that in every province, in every state, they have different types of taxes. So when you're using the Canadian calculator, on the left-hand side in the expense section, you're going to see a button, and you just enter in whatever province you happen to be purchasing that property in, and the land transfer tax will automatically be generated for you. Now, having said that, it is a calculator that's been created by human hands, and it's being used by human beings, and the old rule of garbage in, garbage out certainly applies in all analyzers, not just mine, but any analyzer you happen to use. So never trust any analyzer 100%. The reason I want you to play with this is to become accustomed to the numbers, so that when you see a really good deal, it's going to jump out at you and you're going to say, wow, what's wrong with this? I'm not used to these good numbers. I'm going to go back and do it again. And that's exactly what happened with some students of mine from Southern Alberta. She couldn't believe it when she finally found a deal that made sense using the analyzer. And this was after using the analyzer for about a year, because all the deals she put in just didn't make sense, And she was getting very, very frustrated. And then one day, all of a sudden, voila, it worked. There was a deal that made sense, and she couldn't believe it. So she had to go back and run the numbers several times just to make sure. So there's that aspect of it. On the flip side, you don't want to ever buy a property based solely on the results of your analyzer, again, whether it be mine or anybody else's, because if you made a mistake and you go out and buy that property, only to discover that it's not going to cash flow as well as you want. So you always have to check again and again to make sure that it's a good deal, and have somebody else look at it for you as well. So just play with the analyzer to get accustomed to it, and I think you'll find it pretty easy to use. Then in lesson 10, I introduced you to the mortgage analyzer, and this is a spreadsheet that I created to manage multiple mortgages. Now you can get a mortgage calculator. You can buy a mortgage calculator. For example, here's a mortgage calculator that every real estate agent and mortgage broker will have. You can pick them up at Staples or wherever as well. Or you can just go online and you can download a mortgage calculator as well. And I like actually having one online, and that reminds me, I'm going to upload a link to the mortgage calculator that I use just for single mortgages. The reason being is that it allows you to print out the amortization schedule as well. So the frustration and the challenge I had with that particular analyzer, though, is that it only dealt with one mortgage, because that's all it was designed for. And I couldn't find any analyzer out there that would handle more than one mortgage, so that's why I had to create one. So you'll see that in the presentation I did for lesson number 10, I showed you how to input all the information. All the tabs across the bottom of the screen, you can just open as many tabs as you want and manage as many mortgages as you actually want as well. And you can take the proceeds or the profits from mortgage 6 and you can apply them to mortgage 1, mortgage 2, or you can split them over mortgage 3, mortgage 4. You can play around with it and see what the effect is, and you'll quickly learn that it's not a straight line calculation, meaning that the more money you put down on a mortgage doesn't mean it gets paid off faster. Sometimes it's more beneficial to stop paying down large chunks of money on mortgage number 1 and start to focus on mortgage number 2 and 3. So that's why you need to, again, play around, just come up with some hypothetical numbers, have some fun with it, get accustomed to it. Then for the last lesson, lesson number 11, it was a long one. I apologize for that, but when I went back and reviewed it from the first time I put the program out, it just made sense to replay that entire lesson because Joanne was sitting with me and she was playing devil's advocate, and she asked some really good questions, and it was good timing at that point in time as well, because Joanne, although she's been an active investor, I've been the one doing all the wheeling and dealing, and she's sort of behind the scenes. So for her to see some of these creative ideas and how I was using the analyzer was relatively new to her. And she was asking some questions which I felt were very valid. And it would be difficult for her to do that now because she's got that much more experience, plus she's been an active real estate agent, so she's got a totally different perspective. So I just wanted to replay that whole lesson for the 60 minutes, and that's one you may want to go back and watch several times as well. So that's it for module number 2. I'm going to open it up to questions, so go ahead and type in any questions you have. And while I'm waiting for the questions to come in, I'll just explain that module number 3 has been uploaded, so it should be available to you. It should be available to you right now. And in module number 3, there's 6 lessons. And next Monday night, we'll go over all 6 lessons, and we will do the Q&A for that as well. And then module 4 will be released that day, and then the final module the week after that. All right, so here we have Donna, Ken. Sorry if I have to lean in here, but the computer's too far away. On the single family analyzer, where do you input the renovation costs for the second unit, basement unit? The repairs improvements says to use the buy flip analyzer if it's over 10K. So the buy flip analyzer actually is uploaded in, hang on, let me get the module 3. Getting all my modules mixed up here. It is, yes, it is uploaded now actually, the buy fix analyzer. And the buy fix analyzer is a great tool to help you determine not so much the cash flow, but the actual costs of the renovation. And there's also a couple other spreadsheets there to help you with the buy fix cells, or when you're doing a basement renovation, there's what we call a Gantt chart, which is like a timeline. So if there's any engineers out there, you'll know what, or contractors, you'll know what a Gantt chart is. But it's basically a timeline to help you maximize the use of your time when you're doing the renovation. There's also a budget analyzer to help you create a budget and help you keep on the budget as well. In the actual analyzer, in the bottom left hand side, actually I'm just going to bear with me, I will open one up. That's not what I want to do. Sorry. It is, I just had the computer cleaned up and he's moved all my, this one. All right, so this isn't the exact same one, but in the bottom left here, oh, I have to move this. Under the purchase cost, you'll see, sorry, acquisition fee. Oh, okay, sorry, my mistake. They took it out. It's in the more advanced. So what you can do is you can put it in the acquisition fee, or you can, yeah, that's actually something I may go back and add in there. That's a good point. I'm glad somebody asked that. You know, there we go. Okay, so I will go back and take a look at that. But for now, if let's say, for example, it's $30,000 you want to add in there, you can put that in the acquisition box because it's a one-time expense. In the other expense column, which is more in the center, those are your annual expenses, so you definitely don't want to put it in there. It's a one-time expense, so over to your left-hand side. Let's use by flip. All right, okay. So, well, I'm just waiting for some other questions to come in there. I'm going to answer one here, which is to deal with the property analyzer as well. It says, expenses such as property management and maintenance, etc. Well, we had this question before. Expenses such as property management maintenance are not included. So, well, there's a two-part question. You use property management and you use line of credits for me. Okay, so it is a little bit different concept here than your conventional buy and hold, because what we're trying to do is generate as much cash flow as possible, as quickly as possible, so that we can take that cash flow and apply it directly to debt reduction. So we don't want to set money aside for the expenses. We don't want to set money aside for the property management, because you're going to be doing that yourself. You need to be aware that there's going to be potential for expenses, such as property management and maintenance. However, you don't set that money aside initially. So if you just use the bare bones, what we call the PITI, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, if those are your four main expenses, now the principal and interest is your mortgage payment combined, your taxes, your property taxes, and then your property insurance. Everything else you can pretty much download to the tenant. You may want to also include the water and sewer in there. That's a difficult one to download sometimes. But with just those basic expenses, let's say that your cash flow is $600 a month. You want to take that $600 a month and apply it towards your debt. If it was a conventional buy and hold where you're not focusing on paying down the debt, what people would normally do is they would take a percentage or a lump sum amount on a monthly basis and set that aside for maintenance, property management, cleaning, etc. So you might end up with $300 being set aside in a reserve fund, so that it's sitting there ready to be used in the event that you've got a property tenant that moves out, does some damage, or you have to replace a fridge, whatever the case. But while it's sitting there, it's doing nothing for you. With the 5 Homes to Freedom program, what we want to do is we want to take every penny we can get our fingers on and apply that towards the mortgage pay down as quickly as possible. Then in the event that something does happen, there's a cash call, you need $1,500 to do repairs, whatever the case may be. You don't have the $1,500 in your bank account because you didn't create that reserve fund. So what you do is you have a line of credit specifically for maintenance and repairs. You then use $1,500 from your line of credit, do the work that needs to be done, and then you can focus on paying down that line of credit in the next month or two. And then once the line of credit's paid off, you go back to paying down the debt as quickly as possible. That's maximizing the use of every dollar and every penny out of that property as quickly as possible. It's called the velocity of money. Okay. Any other questions? Oh. Okay, one big one from Module 1. I'm going to leave that towards the end. This one's from Ryan. I have been told I can't have more than 5 mortgages, including my own personal mortgage. Is this true? This is the challenging part about investing in real estate. In whatever program or whatever you're actually investing in, has always been the financing. And the only thing, I jokingly say, the only thing that you can count on with investing in real estate is that nothing ever remains the same, especially the financing. I have never done 2 deals that have gone perfectly, like the same. Every deal is different. They're all unique. And you could do 2 deals 2 months apart with the same lender, and it's just not going to go. I don't know why. It depends who's handling the transaction at the bank, what they require, how they read the documents, or how they lose the documents. There's always something. So that's probably the biggest frustration I have with investing in real estate, is the financing side of things. because not only is it different each time, but the rules keep changing. Now, when I was speaking to a mortgage broker friend of mine about 4 months ago, when I was revamping this program, she brought that exact same point up, is that you can't get multiple mortgages anymore. The banks will not allow you to have more than 5 mortgages, and that includes your own personal residence. Well, that sort of flies in the face of what we're trying to do. Now, there's always a way to get around every challenge that you come up with. You just need to know what are the rules, what you can do and what you can't do. So one of the things that you can do, I mean, you can, it's difficult to do joint ventures. If you're both on the mortgage, then you still have a mortgage. So that counts against you. Now, not every lender is going to follow those rules and those guidelines, and next month the rules could be different again, in your favor or against you. Who knows? That's just the challenge of dealing in real estate. So if you come up to that, with that problem, what you can do is you can do a joint venture but not be on title for that property. So for example, you could find the deal. You could put the deal together, do all of the work, manage the property, find the tenants. If there's cash calls, you can be involved in the cash calls, but you could do everything but qualify for the mortgage. So your joint venture partner will qualify for the mortgage and they'll be on title by themselves. You still have your co-tenancy agreement with the partner so that you're protected that way. Now, your co-tenant's partner, they are on title, which means, well, they could go to the bank and they could refinance it themselves. They could do something else. They could actually sell the property out from under you and you could lose everything. Well, my first question is, what have you actually lost? What did you put into it? If you didn't put any money into it, you haven't lost anything financially other than your time, sweat equity, etc. So I think that's a relatively low risk. The other thing is, you can take your co-tenancy agreement once you've got it created and you can register that against the title of the property as well. So it doesn't prevent the owner from selling the property out from under you, but you now have a legal binding contract that's been registered against the property that you could take them to court. It also prevents the person from refinancing the property, because when the bank goes to refinance it, they're going to pull title and they're going to see that there's this, what they call a cloud on title, or this document registered on title. So that's your way to protect yourself there. So that's probably the easiest way to get around that that clause where you're only allowed to have 5 mortgages now. All right, question here. Baxter. Hi Ken, won't paying down the principal with the extra cash flow create higher taxes to your personal income tax if these units are held in my name? Okay, let me think about that for a sec. So one thing that hasn't been taken into consideration and does have to be taken into consideration is the tax portion. And a big part of the reason why it's not in the calculator is that there's no way to calculate it, because everybody's personal tax is very different. You could be holding these properties inside a corporation, taxed at a very different percentage than if you were to hold them in your own name personally. Then if you are an unemployed individual with low income, you're going to be taxed at a much lower rate than an engineer who's making $200,000 a year. So it's pretty much all over the map. So that brings us back to the question is, well, where is the money taxable? And we've got 2 parts to this equation. We've got the principal pay down. So every month you make a mortgage payment. A portion of it is interest and a portion of it is principal pay down. Even if you're not focusing on paying down that mortgage faster, you're keeping the cash flow separate and you're spending it. The cash flow that you have is taxable income. It has to be taxed at whatever rate you're paying. The principal portion that was already being paid down in your monthly mortgage is going to be added to that over on this side of the equation, and you're going to be taxed there as well. So it doesn't matter whether you bring the cash flow over to pay down the principal and increase the principal, you're still going to be paying tax on the same amount. It's just, whether it's in this column or this column over here, you're still going to be paying tax on that principal pay down at whatever your tax rate is. Now, the way that you can offset that is you can choose 5 properties that you're going to be holding long term, and you can start to depreciate those properties. In the first year, you can depreciate 2% of the building value. In the second year and ongoing, it's 4% of the building value. And that depreciation, especially near the, for the first 5 to 10 years, is going to be greater than what the taxable income is. So it should be tax neutral. Hopefully that answers your question. Okay. If not, please ask more. Excellent question, by the way, though. All right. I don't understand how I can use my lines of credit for down payment. And then there's a second part to the question. When I use someone else's line of credit, how is it in? I talk about it being infinite. Okay. So that's 2 parts. So the first part is the line of credit. When, let's say you've got a line of credit that's worth $50,000. That's what you've qualified for, but it's just sitting there. You haven't borrowed anything against it. So you've got the ability to borrow it. And it's secured against your personal residence. So you've got a reasonable rate of, say, 4% interest. But it doesn't cost you anything because you're not using it. It's just sitting there idle. When you go to borrow from the bank, for whatever reason, the bank is going to take a look at all of the money that you owe everybody else, including your credit cards, including your line of credit. So they're going to add up all of these payments, and that's going to dictate or determine how much you can qualify to borrow over and above what you already have the ability to borrow. So for example, if you've got 3 credit cards, each with a $10,000 limit, but you carry 0 balances, what they're going to do is they're going to max out those credit cards, and they're going to apply the minimum monthly payment to your debt credit ratio. They're also going to take your line of credit, and they're going to max it out to the $50,000, if that's what you're qualified for, at the 4% interest with a small principal payment. And they're going to take that payment and they're going to add that to your debt credit ratio as well. So they're going to assume that everything has been maxed out, and that will determine, and whatever's left over is what will qualify you for the mortgage moving forward. So since they've already calculated that into the equation, that means you can actually use that $50,000 to help you buy the property, and that can become your down payment or part of your down payment. So that's the first part of the question. The second part is, when I use someone else's line of credit, how does that become an infinite return? So this is one that a lot of people have a hard time getting their head around, because when you invest somebody else's money in a deal, it's not your money, but you're getting paid for it. So when you do the calculation to see what your return is, percentage-wise, you take the amount that you received, the interest. So let's say you received $10, and you invested $100 to make that $10. So you take your $10, divide it by 100, and you now got a 10% return on your investment. So that's how they calculate it. But instead of making $10, you're only making $5 because you borrowed that $100, and it's costing you $5 to borrow it. So after you pay the bank for that $100 that you borrowed, you still have $5 left over. So that's your return. You take your $5 and you divide it by what? You don't have any of your money in the deal. So you divide it by 0. And when you do that on your calculator, it's going to come up as error because it cannot compute. That's because it's an infinite return. So that's how you get the infinite return portion. So hopefully that answers your question. They're not on the call live tonight, so. All right, so. Charmaine, hi Ken, is it better to reduce the debt of the first home or try to reduce them 2, 3, or 4 homes proportionally? Well, that's an excellent question, and that's why you have to play with the mortgage analyzer, is because no 2 mortgages are the same. The interest rate, the amortization, the amount you borrowed, how far you're into the mortgage. I mean, if you got a mortgage that's with a 25-year amortization, but you're 1 full year into it, it's going to be calculated differently than a brand new mortgage, even at the same interest rate. So it's really difficult to say, yes, you need to put it against property number 1, 2, and 3, or 3, 4, and 5. What you have to do is you have to run scenarios and say, okay, I've got this $1,000 a month extra cash flow. What's the best use? If I put $1,000 a month on property number 1, which is probably too much, you'll probably have to do it in a lump sum payment. So maybe you break it into smaller payments over 3 properties and see what the effect is. I wish I had an easier answer for you, but there simply is no easy answer. That's why you have to play with the analyzer and just get accustomed to it. All right, so Baxter, yeah, okay, it makes sense, perfect. All right. Donna, where should I go to research the past appreciation rate for my area in order to estimate how much my house will increase over the next 5 years? Is there a website that we will use, that we can use to help with this? Yes. How specific it is, I'm not 100% sure. And actually, Elliot, who's on the call, is very detail oriented with this. And oh my, I'm going blank. Sorry. It is in Canada, it's CMHC. And if you go to the CMHC site, they have, it's not the easiest site to navigate through, but you can find in, I think, any center 10,000 or greater. It might be 20,000 population or greater. I can't recall. So for the city of Edmonton or Calgary or Ottawa, any large center, they will have the stats on those centers, or those cities rather, and they'll be broken down into multiple sections, northeast, southwest, etc. So the city of Ottawa, well, city of Calgary, Ottawa, and Edmonton, they're all about the same size geographically. They're probably broken into 6 or 8 regions. So Elliot's saying yes, StatsCan, and it is StatsCan and CMHC, and the number is 10,000, sometimes smaller. How's that? Perfect. Thank you very much, Elliot. So actually, if people are interested in contacting Elliot, Elliot, are you game to letting people contact you? If so, I will give out your email address to people. If not, I'll respect that as well. But Elliot is great at doing this digging of information. And it changes too, because the most recent StatsCan pages are much more difficult to navigate than the previous ones. CMHC, I haven't been on there for a couple of years actually, but that's probably the best resort or resource for you. There's also a lot of cities, like the city of Edmonton. The city of Edmonton has a great website and a great resource. They've got crime rates. They've got all kinds of really good information on there. So always check out the city of the city's website or municipality's website. They get a lot of their information from Stats Canada and CMHC as well. So they've already done the research for you. And Elliot says absolutely. So Elliot's email address, if anybody wants to contact Elliot directly to get some more guidance and help with respect to doing some research on these types of numbers, it's Elliot, that's ELLIOTT _ Tesmer, which is TESSMER @live.ca. And sorry, on vacation for a week, so I may not reply immediately. Perfect. Well, thank you very much for doing that, Elliot. I'm sure everybody will appreciate that. All right. Okay, so the last big question I have, which the reason I'm saving it to the last is because it's a little bit, well, I may get a little bit long-winded. I get a little bit passionate about this. This goes back to Module 1, and it's talking about in Module 1, let me just see which lesson it was. It was Lesson number 4, actually determining your why, your motivation, and this is dealing with a coach or mentor. And it was quite a simple question, who have I been mentored in over the years, and how has it helped me? So that's a pretty detailed question. The very first mentor I had was through a company or organization called Marshall Silver. And Marshall Silver is a hypnotist. And all a hypnotist is a, what's the word I'm looking for? They reprogram your mind, okay? And he's very similar to Tony Robbins, but he's more of an entertainer than Tony Robbins is. But he still provided a lot of value to us. He came to one of our real estate education events, and that's where I first saw him. And that's where I was introduced to mentoring, and I signed up for a program. It was an 8 or 10 week long program where I was coached. I can't even remember if it was half an hour, once a week. And the mentor was down in Florida. Don't recall his name at this point in time, but he was the gentleman who introduced me to the vision board and the power of the vision board. And I will be forever grateful to that gentleman for the time he spent with me and the opportunity to learn from him. And I'm currently, my vision board is over there, partially complete, because it's been sitting blank for about 2 years. And my most recent mentor, Mr. Bob Proctor, basically kicked me in the butt last weekend because I didn't have my vision board created. So after Marshall Silver, Joanne and I both, then we followed Tony Robbins, and we took all of his training events. We did the fire walk a couple times. We climbed poles, all kinds of different tasks that really push the envelope of comfort. And the whole point of that is to help you realize that the fears you have are all in your head. They're not real. And once you break through those things that are holding you back, you just feel so empowered and powerful. The challenge is to maintain that and keep it and not slip back into your old beliefs. I would put Robert Kiyosaki as one of my main mentors as well. And a mentor doesn't have to be somebody that you talk to personally. A mentor can be somebody that you just follow and read their books or follow their teachings. However, for myself, I was fortunate to attend probably 6 of Robert's events, and because I was working directly with Darren Weeks as well, I got to spend a lot of time with Robert as well. So learned a lot from Robert and all of his the people that support him as well. And Robin Sharma has been a very influential person for me. I follow him. He's a former lawyer, a Canadian out of Toronto, and the book that I really like that he has written, and I've read it a couple times now, and I recommend it to everybody, is a book called A Leader with No Title. And then my most recent mentor that I'm following, and I hope you picked up on that. So as successful as people think I am, as successful as I know I am, I'm still seeking out mentors all the time. I always want to improve and grow. So since last summer, I've been reading, actually, still reading this book, and will continue to read this book probably forever. We don't read anymore, we study. And I've got all kinds of books from Bob Proctor. So lots of information, lots of videos. I've attended his events 3 times now live. The most recent one was last weekend in Toronto, where I spent 3 days. 18 of us spent 3 days with Bob Proctor directly. I'm also being coached by his son, Brian, and really pushing my beliefs and my paradigms, my fears, and because you never get rid of your fears. You always have something that's going to hold you back. What you want to do is you want to learn how to identify them and how to break through them more quickly. And it's funny because about a month ago, something happened for myself, and I was, on a scale of 1 to 10, I was probably operating around a 9, just chugging along, doing great. Then something happened, and bang, I went right down to a 3, and I felt really bad, and I couldn't believe that all of a sudden I realized, what happened? I went from a 9 to a 3, and I just stopped and I started to think about it. And then I realized, well, hang on, that doesn't make any sense. And I went right back up to a 9. Now, it took me a couple of days to get back up to the 9, but before I started all of this coaching and mentoring with Bob, I would have been knocked out for months, possibly. So it's extremely important that you find the person that you connect with, and their story relates to you. And don't just take one course or read one book. This is not a one-shot deal. This is a lifetime commitment, because you will just keep reverting back to your old ways. It's a constant struggle, not a struggle. It's a struggle, but it's a struggle you want to win. So you're going to continue doing it. So I can't speak highly enough of Mr. Bob Proctor. That's why I uploaded an interview with Louise Beckinsale. Now, Louise, she's a friend of ours, but she's also a Thinking into Results facilitator. Thinking into Results is a coaching program that is with the Proctor Gallagher Institute. In the past, I would have watched the videos, read the material, I wouldn't have written out the exercises, and I would have thought, that's pretty good, and then move on and retain about 5% of it. Now, what happens is Louise holds me accountable. She wants to see the exercise, that I've written out, and you write it out every day, and you repeat it. You think, well, I just did this exercise yesterday. Doesn't matter. You do it again today. You do that for a week or 2 weeks. We're doing it 2 weeks. And the actual physical process of writing it out has been phenomenal. That has been a game changer for myself, for my wife, for Bob as well, as a friend of ours. The three of us are taking the course together, and all of our businesses are just skyrocketing because of this. So I cannot recommend it highly enough. It is phenomenal. So it's a really good program. It doesn't have to be that program, but whatever program you follow, stick with a program and do what the program says. It's designed specifically to create results. And if you try and shortcut it, it's just not going to work. And it's an ongoing process. So I told you that was going to be a long-winded answer, which is why I left it to the end. I think I've answered the question well enough. So that's that's who I've been mentored by in the past. That's why I've been mentored, and I will continue to be mentored. Mr. Proctor is he's 82 now, so I'm not sure how much longer he'll be with us, but there's other people coming up behind him who are teaching the same information, who are just phenomenal as well. So highly recommend their program. Check it out. If it's not their program, if that doesn't resonate with you, then check out somebody else's program. But by all means, the personal development side of this is critical to your success. Because, without saying names, there's 1 or 2 people that are on the call tonight who have a challenge with raising capital. Well, you can raise capital as easily as I can, as easily as the next person. The only thing stopping you or preventing you from raising capital or doing anything is right up here. And that's the same thing for me. I've got the exact same fears, the exact same challenges. We're all the same. Please, I'll get off my soapbox now, but I cannot speak highly enough of mentoring and the programs to keep you on board. All right, so I've gone on long enough with that. I don't see any other questions that have come in here. Oh, what was the program I mentioned? Okay, so it's Thinking into Results. Actually, in lesson, get my books, was in module 1, lesson number 4. I talked about the psychology of winning. And there's actually an interview with Louise Beckinsale. It's about a 20-minute interview that she and I do. And she is the facilitator. The nice thing about this particular program, it's not cheap. I think it's about $4,000, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not 100% sure, but it's worth every penny. And it's a 6-month program, and you just go through it. You, depending on the number of students the facilitator has in queue, you may only be one-on-one during the call, or you may have 3 or 4 other people on the coaching call that you have every week. The nice thing about having multiple people on a coaching call is you get to learn from their experiences. And I've learned as much, if not more, from other people's stories than I have from my own, because a question that somebody else asks, usually I've got the same question myself, but I never thought to ask it, or I was too afraid to ask it. So it's called Thinking into Results. You can go to Procter and Gallagher. You can go to Procter and Gallagher Institute. Just Google that and Thinking into Results program. All right, so we're almost at the top of the hour. Good timing. That was a good call. Very pleased with the number of people that came on tonight. Thank you. Well, I'm just waiting to see if there's any other questions coming in. Just again go over, get my papers mixed up here. So we've got 6 lessons to cover this next week. The first lesson is talking about principal pay down. Lesson number 2 is the timing, the effect of the different timing of payments. And lesson number 3 then is determining or coming up with some different sources of cash, whether it be personal, other investments, etc. And just to, well, I'll talk about that for a sec. Because in the previous program, when we ran this, I had a couple people who were a little, how would I say, upset because they thought that I was, or they took it upon themselves to think that I was telling them how to run their personal lives as far as budgeting. I wasn't doing that at all. I mean, I would never tell anybody how to live their life. If a person wants to smoke 2 packs of cigarettes a day, go to Starbucks and drink 4 coffees and watch TV all night, whatever, that's entirely, and they're happy, more power to you. All I'm suggesting is that you may want to take a look at your life and how you spend your time, how you spend your money, and your resources, to see if there's some way to free up some cash. That's all I'm talking about there. Then in the last 3 lessons of module number 3, we talk about wholesaling or assignments, and then we talk about the buy, fix, and sells, and lesson 6, we talk about the rent owns. I don't go into the detail of teaching you how to do these. I'm talking about on a high level how they're done so that you can understand what the opportunities are and realize what kinds of money there is out there that you can potentially earn. All right, so it looks like that's it for questions tonight. And it looks like the program or the evening went smoothly. Can you just type in if everything went smoothly on your end? I'd appreciate some feedback. How was it, Elliot? Thumbs up. All right, so either everybody's gone to bed now. Now, I know there is a delay. Oh, yep, Baxter says, yes, thank you. All right, well, that's good to know. Again, I apologize for last week's errors, but it seems like I got everything worked out now. So awesome, getting lots of things coming in here now. Great. All right, well, thanks very much, everybody. Enjoy lessons 1 to 6 in module number 3, and I look forward to seeing you again next Monday. Take care.